It's been known for a long time that ApoE is, the risk from ApoE is different among different racial and ethnic groups. So Africans have very low risk secondary to ApoE4 relative to Europeans, and Asians appear to have the highest risk from ApoE4. The reason for that has not been known for a long time. And so what we have done recently is we've collected samples on African Americans and Hispanics from the Americas. So both of these groups are admixed and they have different ethnic backgrounds. Hispanics from the Americas, originally, of course, in South America and Caribbean, there were Amerindians lived, and then the Spaniards and the Portuguese came in and intermarried. Then there was the slave trade came around the Caribbean and the northern parts of South America. So Hispanics in the Americas have backgrounds of African, European, and Amerindian. African Americans also have a background of European and African mix. Okay, so we were collecting samples from both of these groups, and using that we were able to identify the different parts of the chromosome that come from the different ancestors. You see this on 23andMe, things like that. And what we showed was that if you inherited your ApoE4 allele from your European ancestor, that you got the European risk. And if you inherited it from your African ancestor, you got the lower African risk. And this was because there's something around the ApoE4 allele that is protective for Africans from the ApoE4 allele. It's not their global ancestry or their environment, it's something fairly close to the actual gene. So what does that mean for clinical work? Well, first of all, it means that people that have ApoE4, not all people have the same risk for ApoE4. Particularly if you're an individual with Hispanic background. When I say Hispanic of the Americas, because obviously Hispanics from Spain or Portugal don't have admixture as much, very little. So it really matters where that ApoE4 came from. So you could have an ApoE4 that's really not much risk to you relative. So this is a good example of how precision medicine is beginning to come in to this effect. So I think from a clinical aspect, we're seeing this, we're going to see this more and more, this idea of the risk is different between different groups for the same genetic marker. And that's probably because the regulatory areas, which make up about 98% of your chromosome, your genomes, that's the differences. And so some people may have like a part of their genome that's kind of like a turbocharger and ups the output of some gene. The gene may be the same, but the regulatory mechanism may be different. So this is going to be something that clinicians are going to have to deal with more and more. It's going to be important in clinical trials. Obviously, if you're measuring people with ApoE4 in a clinical trial, not all people are going to be the same. And as we expand into including other diversities, which we have to do, other groups, this is going to become something that people have to take into account.